After analyzing tons of replays of different brackets, based on my experience, there are a few standout things that people are doing incorrectly in the lower brackets that are making them less impactful as a mid laner. In this video, I will cover a few crucial aspects of the mid lane that will help you climb to the highest of the brackets. This will be structured, so make sure not to skip out on anything, as every aspect is important. I've seen many players in the lower brackets not trading their spells and resources properly in the first 2 minutes, and as a result, most of the time their bottle arrives after the 2-minute mark. Getting your bottle before the first pair of water runes spawn is crucial. Mid lane is mostly about resource management and efficient trading. If your opponent knows how to do this better than you, they will always get their bottle before you, and then you'll be forced away from the lane. If you don't have regen, you won't be able to approach the creep waves, and you won't be able to secure any CS. As a result, you will be behind in net worth and levels, and eventually, your opponent will kill you because of that advantage. If you see high rank mid matchups, you will notice that around the 2-minute mark, both the mid heroes usually have close to no mana and less amount of HP. These players do everything in their power to secure every single last hit with their spells, and in some cases, also trade their HP for it. The whole concept is to secure as many last hits as possible so they can get their bottle before the water runes spawn, and then regen back to full HP and full mana thanks to the bottle refill from the rune. Low rank players don't do this, they will try to preserve their resources and play passively. In terms of using your spells, most mid heroes have AoE creep securing spells. For example, Voice Spirit has Resonant Pulse, Puck has Illusory Orb, Shadow Fiend has Raises. Since these spells are AoE, the most effective way of using them is by securing creeps while also doing damage to the enemy hero. This way, not only do you get gold, but you also do damage to the enemy hero, which eventually opens up other opportunities that we will discuss later on in this video. Last hitting is very important for several reasons. Securing last hits gets you gold. Gold gets you the items that you need to have a good time in the mid lane. For example, if you cannot get CS, your bottle will be delayed, and because of that, you will struggle in the lane. In the mid lane, every small thing matters, and this can make or break your game. We've already discussed one way to secure last hits before. Now let's discuss the other way. Why do you think Quinn consistently wins most of his matchups in tournaments? Because this guy has an aimbot on creeps. These are not my words. Quinn himself has said that the biggest thing separating the skill level at mid is the raw capability of securing last hits, and unlike other things in Dota, this part can actually be practiced like how you would practice aiming in an FPS game. All you have to do is repetitions of last hit trainers, and your last hitting will improve by itself. If you can find a 1v1 sparring partner, that will be better. Securing last hit gets you gold, denying creeps gets you level advantage. Both these factors eventually lead to killing the enemy mid laner. One of the biggest aspects, if not the biggest, in the mid lane is knowing how to trade properly. Trading combined with excellent last hitting capability will lead to stomping lanes. Here are a few tips to trade efficiently. The first thing you need to keep in mind is the number of creeps on both sides. Whenever you have more creeps than the enemy does, you should force a trade, and similarly, if the enemy has more creeps than you do, you should avoid trading. As a ranged hero, you should not trade from the low ground as you will miss a bunch of hits, and the enemy will have tower protection aura in most cases. However, if you have a decent numbers advantage in terms of creeps, then it is fine to do that. When you know that you can't deny a creep, for example, if the enemy has a spell that will secure the creep no matter what you do, instead of trying to deny that creep, you can hit the enemy hero and make them lose some of their HP for that creep. Forcing a trade when you know the enemy doesn't have any backup regen left while you do is always beneficial. This will allow you to zone the enemy away from the wave or force them to go back to base. If they get zoned out of the wave, you can deny a lot of creeps and gain XP advantage. Always check the enemy inventory continuously to know how much mana they have left. As a mid laner, if you are not conscious about the power runes, you will never become a good player. Runes aren't important because they accelerate your game. They are important because they are a neutral objective. Runes can be taken by the enemy, and if they get them, different things can happen. They can come back after getting stomped in the lane because they got a regen or a double damage. They can gank a side lane if they got a haste rune and ruin the game for your side lanes. Players in the lower brackets don't know runes exist. Runes are important, and I would advise you to be there for every single rune. Your map movement should revolve around the rune timers as much as possible. Here are a few tips to be able to secure runes. Always have more than 70% HP/mana before the runes spawn. This will give you a chance to fight for the runes and not feed the enemy for free. You will find yourself not being able to contest runes if you are low on HP or mana. Try to push in the lane before the rune timer. This will allow you to not miss out on any gold or XP, and not only that, if the wave is pushed into the enemy tower, your opponent will have to decide between going for the runes and missing out on a wave, or taking the wave and missing out on the rune. If you're in a disadvantageous scenario, just walk to the rune opposite to where your opponent is going. Sometimes luck can be on your side and you can get a rune for free. Ask your supports to help with the runes. They can walk to one side of the rune while you go to the other. This way, even if you don't get the rune, your support will, and the enemy won't be able to take it. Get a ward and sentry before nighttime, which starts at minute 5. Having a high ground ward will help you with runes and see potential ganks. Most of the ganks happen at nighttime due to limited vision. Dying for runes is not worth it. If you see the enemy having a significant advantage, that is being higher level than you, having spells to stop you, or their supports are ready to punish you, then you should give up on taking the rune. Lastly, power runes aren't just for the laning phase. You should be present at literally every power rune timer. You will see pros contesting or just being there at every single rune timer. That's how important power runes are. Players have a misconception that if you're a mid laner, your job is to roam around the map and force something to happen. Because of this, I've seen so many players walking from their lane to a side lane without even knowing whether rotation will work or not. This could have worked in the previous patches as it was less punishable, but in the current patch, the map is 40% bigger than before, which means you have to spend more time moving from the mid lane to a side lane. Rotating is good, but it should be done in a way to accelerate your own game rather than helping to improve your teammates' game. You're not a support or a roamer, you are a mid laner. You have the second most farm priority in the game. Players think that if we don't rotate, we are bad mid players, which is wrong. In terms of playing the game, only think about stuff that will accelerate your own game, whether that is farming over rotating. As long as it is accelerating your own game, it is good. In the current patch, you want to solve the problem of the time wasted moving from one lane to another. This can be done by either TPing to a side lane and then making a play, or if you get a haste rune, but there are some conditions for this as well. Whenever you rotate, calculate how much you will lose due to this rotation. Ideally, you want to push in the wave in your lane before you make any sort of rotation so that your tower does not get pressured. And on top of that, you won't lose any gold. Make your rotations natural. This means that you keep accelerating your game by farming, you keep scaling. And if you see some place where you can rotate without spending too much time and decide to go there, that is natural. Think of Dota in terms of a minute. Your goal is to use as much of that minute as you can. If you have nothing to do at mid, you don't need to go and gank a side lane. Instead, you can scale your game by farming or pressuring the enemy tower. Here is an example of a forced rotation. Here you can see that Voice sees an opportunity at the bottom lane and decides to TP to make a play and be quote-unquote active. The problem here is that he does not have boots and he only had one charge on his ult, and as a result, rotation failed. Eventually, Venomancer comes out of position and Void gets a kill on the Venomancer, but now he has to walk back to mid. During this whole minute, Void only gained 300 gold, and not only that, Cobb gained 500 gold without doing anything. All she did was hit 2 creep waves. She could have also pressured the mid tower a bit more since Void spent an entire minute away from the mid lane. Instead of rotating to a side lane, think of a way to force the enemy to come to you. How can you do that? By pressuring the mid lane. You don't have to go to a side lane to be impactful. You can apply pressure in the mid lane by threatening the enemy tower or the enemy mid hero. As a result, the enemy will respond to your pressure and come to you. This makes you keep up with your farm, as you will still be farming while all of this is happening, and not only that, since the enemy will come to you, their time will be wasted. Here is an example. You can see Quinn pressuring the enemy mid tower. He's pressuring mid, and 30 seconds later, the enemy reacts to his pressure, and as a result, suddenly there are multiple heroes at mid. In this whole scenario, Quinn forced the enemy to move from their lanes towards mid, resulting in them expending their time instead of farming, and as a result, the side lanes are completely free for his course. He still kept farming during this time while creating space for his team. This whole concept is immensely important. Just remember to think about Dota in terms of a minute, and your goal is to waste as less time as possible. Always be doing something productive. Before we move on to the importance of pressuring the enemy tower and how to play after taking the tower, please make sure to like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe as well. Pressuring the enemy tower is one of the most impactful things you can do as a mid laner. We saw how Quinn was fixated on pressuring the enemy tower, and as a result, he forced multiple rotation towards mid. You might be wondering, if rotating to a side lane like a headless chicken is bad, what should I be doing instead? Pressure the enemy tower. However, you should be a bit careful, as you can also feed the enemy by doing this. Essentially, it depends upon what kind of hero you are playing. If you're playing mobile heroes like Puck or Spears, then it's easy to do as you can escape. Heroes like Shadow Fiend cannot replicate the same thing as they don't have an escape. Now the real question is, what to do after you've taken the enemy tower? Most players just retreat to their side of the map after taking the enemy mid tower. That is the incorrect thing to do. If you're able to take the enemy mid tower, you're probably stronger than the enemy, and if you retreat to your side of the map, your strong factor no longer exists. After taking the enemy mid tower, you should play around the enemy jungle, shoving in waves into their tier 2, farming their jungle, and rotating from there as it's closer to the side lanes in comparison to the mid lane. Other than that, taking the enemy mid tower basically guarantees you have rune control. Here's an example. Quinn takes the enemy mid tower and sticks around the mid lane. He gets a kill on Pangolier and shoves in a wave, and after that, he goes for the rune. After getting the rune, he shoves another wave into the enemy, and since Quinn was playing so aggressively, enemy Skywrath wanted to deal with the pressure he was creating and ended up dying for it. After that, Quinn farms the enemy triangle, then the next mid wave, and goes back to base to regen back up. In this minute and a half, he went from 4.7k net worth to 6k. That is 1300 gold. After refilling from the base, he TPs back to mid to pressure the lane again. He shoves another wave in, and then rotates top to get a kill on Rubik. The key takeaway from this example is that as a mid laner, you should be farming at the minimum 2 waves in a minute, especially if you got the enemy mid tower, and then you can keep scaling by farming the enemy jungle. The best part about playing this aggressively is that A, you create pressure and the enemy has to react to it, B, you are taking their farm away from them, and C, rotating to the other lanes is easier as the distance from here to here is shorter than from here to here. If you focus on this part of the video and the previous one, I guarantee that you will be the highest impact hero in all of your games. The last aspect I will be going over is prepping your kills. Most players think that they are supposed to 100 to 0 the enemy. No, that's not how it works. Kills only happen if one of the heroes is around 50% HP or so. If you want to solo kill your opponent more often, slowly chip them down to half HP and finish them off eventually. To achieve this, keep spamming your low cooldown spells on them as much as possible, but make sure you are also securing creeps while doing this. The best example of this is Void Spirit's ultimate plus Resonant Pulse combo. In this example, Void Spirit uses his pulse to chip down the primal beast and then follows up with his ult and then goes back. A few seconds later, Void Spirit goes on the primal again and ends up killing him. This is called prepping your kill. Never aim to 100 to 0 your opponent. Chip them down slowly and then finish them off. If you are interested in private coaching, you can join my Discord linked in the description. Please make sure to subscribe and like the video for more high quality content like this. Do let me know in the comments if you have any feedback. Otherwise, have a nice day and good luck with your games.